Hi there, and welcome back to the Energy Sector Heroes podcast. My name is Michelle Fraser, and every week I will speak with incredible people who share their lessons, experiences, and stories from their time spent in the energy sector. Hi there, and welcome back again to this week's episode. If you're new to the show, then please take a second to subscribe and even consider sharing the show with just one other person. This week, I am joined by Akachidike Kanu. Akachi is an incredible project leader. Akachi, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, of course, Michelle. I'm Akachidike Kanu. Everyone calls Akachi for short, which, by the way, means in the Igbo language, Akachi, hand of God. So that means I'm Nigerian by nationality. And like you said, I'm a project leader here with Repsol, EMP. What else? I have a wife and 5 kids.
Oh, wow. That's amazing, actually. That is amazing, actually. So how did you get started off in the energy sector?
Well, that's quite an interesting question, and I think a long story, but I'll do my best to cut that short. I started out there in Nigeria after graduating from the university. It was a tough start. I would describe it as a tough start back in those days, and I think still more the same way now. It's pretty tough for students coming out from the university in Nigeria, and I guess it's the same thing for most third world countries to find a job. I think even in Nigeria, probably we are more fortunate because we had and we still have a thriving oil industry, but still, it wasn't always that easy. So I would describe my start as a tough start, and I also like to think of it as coming from what you may call entrepreneurship, but probably more appropriately described as artisanship, okay, into intrapreneurship or, corporate professional pathway. So in those days as a student, I was a barber. I used to cut hair in school. So when I came out from school and there was no job, I almost went back to my barbing trade. But I thought a little bit, okay, you read chemical engineering, and why not look at some of the challenges that you had as a barber and then try to bring some engineering solution to that. So again, I remember that it used to be, customers always were concerned about the state, the cleanliness of the clipper, So then there were no solutions. There were not much solutions. There was a lot of scare about HIV/AIDS and all that. So I said to myself, why don't you find out, experiment and discover, produce something that has to sterilize clippers and at the same time be a lubricant. So there used to be either a sterilizer or a lubricant for the clipper, and I decided to build one that would combine the two. So I went back to my chemistry and everything. So I started producing this disinfectant lubricant and making just enough money to, put my applications for job and, move from place to place looking for jobs still. So that was how I started. Unfortunately for me, in the course of that, I landed an interview and I was asked, I'm sorry, do you have any experience to work as a process engineer in an oil service company? I said, well, yes. And they said, what's your experience? I said, well, I'm manufacturing lubricants and all of that, for barbers. And they said to me, the interviewer said to me, no, sorry, but this is not oil and gas. I said, well, probably not oil and gas, but the principles are the same thing. And I think that phrase, that sentence excited him a lot. And he said, oh, you talked about first principles. I said, yes. So he asked me a technical question that, related to oil and gas, and then the emulsions and mixing of oil and water and all that. And fortunately for me, I got the question right. And that was how I was hired as an experienced, professional. Actually, they were looking for someone with 10 years experience. So I had a fortunate head start there. And that was how I started. But that was a small engineering consultancy there in Port Harcourt in Nigeria called Titan Engineers and Constructors. And then that was how the journey began, for me.
I like that answer, actually. That is really innovative and very I think I really like that because you took a really bad and challenging situation that you were in, and then you changed it into a win-win for yourself. That must have been really hard, though.
It was tough, indeed. I mean, I was 3 years, like more than 3 years, not working, moving about in the street, looking for job, dropping letters. But then I was also carrying my wares, my lubricant and disinfectant, in my bag, my traveling bag, moving from shop to shop and selling. It was tough in those days, but then, yes, at the end, I was still fortunate to land a job. Well, you might say fortunate. Others thought that maybe if I had continued on that, I could have been richer. I could have been a big, entrepreneur, businessman now. I don't know, but the joy for me was that I was able to get back to doing what I love to do, what I've always loved to do, which is designing equipment, building solutions for the energy and chemical industry. Yeah.
I think it's amazing because after 3 years, a lot of people would have given up. I think you are a real hero for keep going, actually.
Thank you.
So what kept you motivated to keep on going and pursuing your dreams then in the energy sector?
Yeah, good question, because I also think about that myself, and I think that staying focused on what I consider to be my calling was a motivating point. So I have always thought about profession or professional life as a calling, as a life's calling, as a life calling. So, like I said, I believed that I had this passion, this unquenchable passion to be part of designing and building out, solutions, equipment, processes that will support the energy, the quest for energy, the energy appetite of the world, and of course also material development. So so whether that was oil and gas or not, I was determined to do that, even if I had to do that from my backyard. Then before I joined oil and gas, but that has been my drive, my drive, and still is much my drive. Yeah.
It is an amazing story, actually. So, have you had any mentors during your career?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that it's technically impossible for anyone to really make career progress without mentors. Well, we may not call them mentors, but there are always those who are there like angels. I'll prefer to see mentors, like or as angels. Yes, I have had quite a number of them, many.
What is the most important thing that they've taught you that you've always kept, that you always use all the time?
Yes, I can still remember the voices of some of my mentors. I remember Dr. Victor one once told me that you have to stoop to conquer. So in whatever situation, you don't always have to win to be a victor. So you may have to lose in order to to win or to gain. So again, I learned that it's really not about winning when it comes to career, it is, or profession, is actually about succeeding. So winning sometimes connotes competing or fighting. But succeeding is achieving the goal, having your eyes on the goal and achieving it. And so if you have to lose to achieve the objective, you succeed and not necessarily winning. So that's one of the voices of my mentors that still rings in my head. And there are so many of those mentors, depending on where and when I am.
Okay. So, what is the most challenging aspect of your current role?
The most challenging aspect of my current role,
Yeah.
I think that, well, I wouldn't know which one is the most challenging, the most challenging, but there are so many challenges, right? But really, I by my training now, or will I say experience, I have come to think of challenges also as opportunities. We don't really talk much about challenges. We deal more with opportunities, and then challenges could be opportunities. So probably the best way for me to answer this is to think of challenges as opportunities. So the biggest challenge we had, or the biggest challenge, I myself and my team, is that we are to deal with the small of the small projects. So we are dealing with sustaining capital-based business kind of projects, and this was a team that was established during the downturn of 2018, 2019, when the industry started focusing on value instead of volume, right? And trying to say, let's consolidate on what we're doing. You remember, like about 4 or 5 years ago, there was basically zero investment because of the double or maybe triple whammy of depression in commodity prices on one hand, and then the energy or climate change, the push, and all of that. So, the challenge then for us was to start, to develop a process, to develop a program, a model that will define and guide how these kind of projects are developed, identified, developed, and executed, contrary to the traditional project development and execution process, which tended and still tends to satisfy or focus more on the big mega projects that our industry have been, very used to. So traditionally, our industry is dealing with billions, multi-billion, dollar projects in the deep waters or wherever, or in the desert. But we talk about, hundreds of millions and billions. And here we have to now start looking at projects that cost us, $5,000, for example, scattered all over the place, thousands of them, across all our operations around the world. So, and we had this, like I said, traditional methods of dealing with big projects and applying them in smaller projects was a big challenge. So the biggest challenge was how to appropriate, how to, how to use what we know and have done well and apply it in a newer, perspective or scale. Yeah.
Okay. So what has been the most important lessons learned throughout that situation, though?
Oh, yes. The first lesson that we learned is that it's doable. Anyway, everything is doable, especially when you just have to do it, right? When we just have to do it. So, again, coming out from a very, very prosperous bumper, boom market, then it was like, oh, this is not what we are used to, looking at every tiny thing with the eye of a microscope, and then trying to adjust. So the lessons learned is that you can always adjust. As they say, you don't have to cut your clothes according to your size, but according to the to your cloth, right? You don't have to cut your coat according to how big you are, but according to how much you have. So that's the big lesson, that we can always adjust. We can always appropriate. Appropriate technology is still applicable even in times of or in environment of big prosperity.
Okay, that sounds amazing, actually. So, is there anything that you still want to achieve in your career?
Yes, of course. Of course, I am not retiring or thinking of retirement. So there is quite still a lot to do. But I think beyond the so-called career ladder, it is more about achieving things in terms of finding solutions that like I said from the beginning, that solve the energy needs of the world. There are two things that two big themes that are driving the industry, not only in the energy industry, probably in the global industrialized world. One is digitalization, and the other is decarbonization, of the energy sector. So I have really, will I say, considered the two, try my hands in both of them, and I can see that based on our competitive advantage in the industry and also as professionals, it looks like for me, contributing in the decarbonization, the quest for decarbonization is is my next area of focus.
I think so. I think it's a lot of
Yeah.
people's focus to have that, to be involved in that. It is quite an exciting time just now in engineering. I think so. You know, your invention for the clipper oil. Do you still get involved in that? Do you still invent your own little inventions on the side? I just wondered. Because I think it was quite an amazing thing that you did, how you got started off in the industry, because you have an amazing career. That's why I reached out to you for you to be on my podcast, because you have an amazing career. Did you
Well,
ever,
thanks for the compliment. Thanks for the kind words. Yeah.
but did you ever really think for the first 3 years after leaving university, did you ever really think that you would be so far ahead of in your career, considering your tough start?
Yes, I had the vision of life. Like I said, I had my eyes on the goal. Yes, I have always wanted to be in the front line of developing and delivering projects that solve energy and materials problems for the world. Yes, and then to the question of whether I still get involved in some level of R&D or innovation and things like that. Yes, I do, even though in spare time. And even talking about decarbonization, I'm still very much in the traditional E&P industry, dealing with exploration, dealing with development and optimization of production, but still at the same time, without in any way de-emphasizing the need for us to decarbonize. So yes, decarbonization for me is an innovation hobby. In my spare time, I do support students at the University of Port Harcourt in Nigeria. I am an external supervisor on pro bono to students in chemical engineering and the Center for Chemical, Gas, and Refining and Petrochemical, and also in the Offshore Technology Institute. So yes, I do take time sometimes and suggest areas of research, review students' research work, and make some input, and and support them in finding. For example, I just called one of the professors few weeks ago, and I said to him, why don't you find some students who can look at absorptive capacities of some special materials to absorb CO2 from the air, and then we can study, that and look at the, Friend-Luch model and all the rest of the absorption models for capturing CO2 from the air. So yeah, things like that. I still do that, but mainly on like on volunteering, part-time hobby basis. But it is not less important at all to overall, career makeup.
But that's even amazing in itself that you would give up your time to tutor young students, because you would have a wealth of experience and a wealth of knowledge about how to navigate yourself to have a successful career. So I think that's really commendable in itself that you would even do such a thing, even to suggest what type of projects the industry would be looking to, would be interested in undertaking. Do you get a lot of value out of working with the young students?
Oh, it's self-satisfaction. Joy is the biggest source of self-satisfaction. So I get that inner joy and peace that I am supporting, I am helping. I have also come a long way, as you can see, and I got some support and some help from people. So to whom much is given, much is expected. I just derive joy in supporting, or if you want to call it giving back, is my own little way. Yeah. Or one of my little ways of giving back. But there's always this joy that comes from helping and contributing, right? How seeing people find their path and succeed and finding yourself to be a part of their story. Yeah.
Because I was quite surprised, because I maybe wrongly thought that Nigeria was quite an oil-rich country. So I was quite surprised that with somebody of your experience and knowledge would not get snapped up, if you know what I mean, quite early on after coming out of the university, to be successful in getting work right away. It surprises me that for 3 years, that's quite long.
Yes, Nigeria is a major oil and gas producing and exporting country, true. But at the same time, this is a country of about 200 million people. I don't know how many graduates they are churning out every year, but if you look at the data, GDP contribution of oil and gas, that is the total product, oil, the production and services and everything that is a part of the overall economy. And I'm not sure, but it's like maybe 5% or probably even less than that. So you can imagine that when compared to the overall economic activity and the value that it is creating for for the people, for the people in terms of industry and involvement of our people in the sector is very little, really. Yeah, it's very little. So there are very few people compared to the bigger population who are involved in that sector.
Okay.
Still, yeah.
I'm quite surprised, actually. So you must hire quite a lot of people over the years. What do you look for when you're interviewing someone?
Oh well, yeah. Yes, I've had opportunity to be on interview panel and also to recommend and interview candidates indeed and to look for people to fit a role. One of the things I usually try to find out from candidates is when they are in need, how do they try to get help, right? So you have been struggling, you're in a kind of quagmire, struggling with 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 a problem, technical or otherwise, commercial, and there are no internal resources within the organization. You've tried, but it's still not working. What else will you do? Yeah, that's what I typically try to, know how a candidate to solve a problem in an island.
Okay. So you're looking for more technical skills than softer skills then when you're interviewing somebody?
Well, not necessarily. So, like I said, this in this particular instance, that problem might be technical, may be business, it may be commercial, but understanding, one's sense of solution, or resolving problems. Once, well, you can call it your philosophy to solving problems, because again, probably I'm biased by my training as an engineer. We are trained to solve problems. But I think that all of what we're doing in the world is, first of all, understanding the world where we are and then making it better for ourselves. And that's what we call, development or finding solutions to challenges. So I always prefer or I'm excited to know each individual's philosophy to making the world a better place.
That's a really good answer, actually. I really like that answer. So what is the most challenging problem that you've had to fix in your career so far?
I think I have to think 1 or 2 seconds to answer that because I've never really thought about something that was really, really most challenging. Okay, now that I think I've thought a little bit, probably my biggest challenge was getting into the international space because, like I said, from the beginning, I always wanted to be out there solving, being in the forefront of developing and implementing solutions to to our world's problem, or at least being a part of that, a part of that story. So apart from the early days in the first 3 years when I struggled to get into the mainstream industry, after about about 7 or 10 years, I was still in the country, which is okay. I was getting a lot of experience, but I thought that I did not consider myself as an international or someone of an international record. So breaking through that for me was, again, not necessarily a challenge, but an opportunity. Yeah.
Okay. So what is your zone of genius? What are you really good at?
What I consider myself as a genius at?
Yeah, please.
Well, I don't even think of myself as a genius in anything. I just think that I'm someone who believes. So if I put my heart to anything, according to my wife, I get it. So it depends really on what you throw at me. Once I commit to it, I just, I just become a genius of it. In terms of natural strengths, I probably see myself as, and then also based on feedback, I think people say I'm very good technical. My technical strength is strong. Analytical strength, I think, is something, it's a kind of feedback I get. So sense of resolving complexity, or maybe systems thinking if you like, but ability to take a very complex situation and simplify it. So yeah, so that's where the analytical probably skills come in, and then modeling, making it simple enough to begin to understand the challenges and then how to solve it.
Okay. But do you think it's important to have good analytical skills as an engineer?
Oh, of course, of course, of course. I mean, it goes without saying that engineers, I think the first definition we had in undergraduate college, yeah, in undergraduate school about engineering was that engineers solve the world's problem using scientific, principles. So, and of course, arts. So you being able to combine arts and science to solve any problem will really, really require a lot of analytical capacity.
I agree, actually. I do actually
Yeah.
agree. So I just wondered, did you always want to be an engineer when you were younger? Or has it been your burning ambition to always be an engineer?
I think in the heart of my heart, I wanted to be an engineer, but I didn't know that was what engineering was, right? So I did not necessarily know that to be engineering, but I have always wanted to discover something that will help, that will contribute, that will improve, the world, that will somehow resolve some challenges. So I didn't know that was what engineering was all about until I started engineering myself. So I was thinking more in terms of science. I was more inclined towards science. I think by the time I was in the what you may call the fourth to fifth grade now, I was already thinking maybe I should do something that has to do with geosciences, earth sciences, because I was now beginning to like exploration, exploring the world and finding something, finding, for example, one of the things that always excited me was, how I could find energy that is free, so we can just get energy from the air, just from air. Air is free. Air is everywhere, for instance. So, and I was thinking I have to be someone who will explore the world or explore space. You know, I actually applied to go and read geology. Then, when I got to the school, then I saw that all my friends had really, applied to do engineering of one kind or the other. So I said, okay, I'm going to submit this form anyway to do geological sciences. But when I get there, I'm going to ask for an opportunity to change it to engineering. If they allow me to do that, then I will do it. If they don't allow me to do that, I'll submit the form anyway. So I got to the office where I had to submit my application form, and I asked, can I use the TPEX? And I think it's called TPEX. I don't know what's called somewhere. The correction fluid, the white thing. Can I just erase it? Then everything was done on paper. Can I erase this and change my course? They say, of course you can do that. So I just erased it and I wrote chemical engineering, and they offered, and that was how I became an engineering student.
But even that's amazing in itself because it could have been, your career could have been so different. Do you never really think about it? Whether if you didn't make the change at the last minute, that your career could have been totally different to what it is today?
Probably, yes, indeed. I do think about it, probably. But then geologists, geoscientists are also not only finding solutions, in the world today, but they're also part of our industry. I'm working with them every day. They explore and they define the statics of reservoirs, and find the volumes. And then all I'm doing, or we do as engineers is to see how we can bring it out. So at the end of the day, we're all working together, solving the same problems. And now we are talking about carbon capture and storage. We're still working with them, on how we can effectively store CO2, for example, in the right reservoirs underground, or we are talking about geothermal, which is one of these solutions. So again, does it really matter whether you call it geological engineering or you're calling it chemical engineering or you call it geology or chemistry? I think it is all about the joy of being part of finding solutions that will improve the world.
I think it does, actually, because carbon capture is quite an important topic just now in the industry, I think the whole world over.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm glad I read chemical engineering because that, for me, one of the benefits I have being a chemical engineer is the flexibility it gives me. All right. It gives me lots of flexibility. Probably if I had been a geoscientist, I would have been less, I would have had, less flexible room or space to do, so many. Obviously, engineers have this benefit of being able to, do so many things. We seem to have a lot of tentacles or a lot of arrows in our pouches, however you want to describe it. But engineers have, is it 9 lives they call it or something? I don't know how to describe it, but as an engineer, you can really, you can almost do everything, or you can do almost everything.
Do you really think that as a chemical engineer that you have a lot more opportunities in the industry?
I really think so. Someone else may think otherwise, but I think that as a chemical engineer, I have had the opportunity to work in many roles that you would not consider to be traditionally for chemical engineers, in addition to those where you think that chemical engineers fit very well. So I have done roles that you might consider to be traditional mechanical engineering roles or petroleum engineering roles, or even economist roles, or even industrial engineering, and so on and so forth. Yes, indeed, that flexibility is there. But beyond the flexibility, beyond the opportunity itself, I think the biggest benefit of engineering as a whole, and chemical engineering in particular, for us, the practitioners or students, as the case may be, is the thinking, right? The thinking, the outlook. Education is all about changing the way you think, right? Fundamentally speaking. So chemical engineering is one thing that makes you think like you can do everything, because at the end of the day, we're dealing with matter and energy, and this is the two things that constitute the world, or probably the universe, that we deal in. And chemical engineers are always manipulating matter and energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do agree with that. Yes, wholeheartedly. So I just wondered, because you seem really enthusiastic, and I love being an engineer as well, and I just feel like we have a very good conversation going. And I just wanted to know, what do you enjoy most about your career? What do you enjoy the most about being an engineer?
Oh, yes. So again, and I hope I'm not saying the same thing for every question, the joy of finding solutions. Energy is a big need for the world today. I'm glad to be part of that, providing energy solutions. Decarbonization or climate action, climate crisis, climate emergency, whatever you want to call it, climate situation. I'm glad that I want to be a part of that. But then on a personal level, engineering, and especially our industry in the oil and gas, especially allows you to, it brings a lot of benefits, right? It brings a lot of benefit. We're in a multicultural environment, people from all over the world coming together, meeting in some famous cities around the world, be it Lagos or Houston or Calgary or Madrid, Stavanger, wherever, we're moving. You have the opportunity to travel around the world, not only working or meeting people, but also living around the world, and working with some of the smartest and let's say culture people around the world. So yeah. So that's wonderful. And also, at at the family level, your kids have the opportunity to also move around, with you and have some of the best experiences in terms of education, and cultural integration, assimilation, and so on. So it's beautiful. It's quite satisfying. One feels really blessed.
So where is the best location you've worked on?
Best location for me, I don't know. I think everywhere is good in one thing and not so good in other things. Yeah, really, I really can't pinpoint what is best. I have to do a detailed, you know, pluses and minuses, cost benefit analysis, and then begin to resolve it. I don't know, but everywhere is good. It depends on what it gives you and what it doesn't give. So, yeah.
So do you like
Madrid is a great place anyway. I'm in Madrid, and Madrid is obviously fantastic. It's a fantastic place, no doubt about that. Yeah.
I've never worked in Madrid, actually. I've worked a few places, but I've never worked in Madrid. So you're very lucky, actually. It's meant to be a really nice area.
We have great food here. We have great weather here. Great people here. What else? What else will you ask for? Oh, people say we don't have so much money, but money is not everything. Yeah.
I agree. I do
Yeah.
agree, actually. So, because you have a wealth of knowledge and experience in the energy sector, I just wondered, do you have any advice to give anybody that's listening that's going to be graduating soon, how to get a career in the energy sector?
Okay, if I should advise someone on how to get into the energy sector and have a good career, I would say get hold of the fundamentals, right? And this is not just about, the energy industry. I think this is for every industry, especially for those of us who are in technical and engineering background. It's very, very important to master the first principles of any discipline, of any endeavor, or of any body of knowledge for that matter. This is important because when you get into the industry, it would matter very little whether you're a chemical engineer or whether you are mechanical engineer. Both of you, you would have done, call it fluid mechanics, call it transport phenomena, or momentum transfer, whatever, civil engineering, or even in electrical engineering, so the principle of diffusion, where you say some, material moves from area of lower potential to higher potential. When you are in electrical engineering, you're still talking about, potential difference, and then instead of talking about diffusion and material, you are talking about electrons and current still changing potential, moving from one level of potential to another. And then whether it's at the molecular level or at a bulk level, where fluid is moving again from one gradient to another. This is what is happening in the world. Rain falling, petroleum moving underground, or stormwater, open drainage, or, pollution moving from. So it's still the first, the basic principles is what is important. Nobody really cares whether what you studied. It is about your ability to use the principle, the scientific principles that you have a good grasp of, to apply it to the problem at hand. So it's important to have a good grasp of first principles and understand that this is your what you really have in your toolbox to solve problems. Yeah.
And I think that's really good advice. I'm going to ask you one maybe final question. If you could turn back time, would you change anything?
Well, why would I think about what I know that I wouldn't? I know that I can't turn back time, and that is not my ambition to turn back time. So I do not want to think about that. What I would change. That has happened. My philosophy is that everything that has happened or everything that precedes the next is a stepping stone for the next. So probably is a challenge now, but it could be a step to the opportunity of the future. So I wouldn't want to change anything that is past. I want to change something that is in future.
Okay, because I keep on going back to how you started out, and I think it's quite an amazing story, actually. Even though that would you do anything differently when you were starting out, considering you had the struggle for 3 years to actually achieve and get your dream role?
Okay, what did I not do right that could have landed me in that? I have more stories to tell. We have National Youth Service, which is mandatory services that youth do, like it's done across the world, some sort of paramilitary and social community service that Nigerian graduates have to do for 1 year after the university. So during that program for me, I was involved in community service where I won a state award, and that entitled me to job offer by the state government. And I was also doing, by reason of my community service also, I had some industrialists, at least one of them that approached me and said, come on, stay with me, let us build dryers. We actually designed dryers and we fabricated some for the local farmers for drying out their grain, to make cassava flour and so on and so forth, gari and so on. So he said to me, come on, stay, let's build this equipment and, make it big and all of that. And then government said, well, you won the award. You could actually take up a job in the ministry and all that. But I turned down all of that and I said, no, my mind is in going to solve, energy problems of the world and being out there, in the front line of things. I want to go to the energy industry. This was just before my 3 years on the street without job. So at that time I regretted. I said, oh, I could have been back in Ibadan, taking the job offers that were before me. If I had done that, I could not have been in this wilderness wallowing for 3 years. But now, I now look back and I'm glad that I passed through the wilderness to the promised land. So it's all about, sometimes you're going through things now and you think, oh, if I had the opportunity, I'm going to change things. But with the benefit of, time, you begin to realize that even the challenges are all part of the journey.
I think so too. And I think you've taken quite a difficult start and journey and turned it into a huge success. I think your career has been amazing as well.
Well, thanks be to God.
That's all the questions I have today. I would like to thank Akachi for your time. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening and see you next week. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, I'd like to gently encourage you to leave a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts and share the show with another person. You can also follow me on LinkedIn or via my website, www.michellefraserconsultancy.com. Thanks again for listening and see you next week.